Hi, Vetfolio Voice listeners. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for this episode featuring Schwanda Flowers of First Financial Bank. If you've ever dreamed of starting a practice, purchasing a practice, this is the episode for you. I know whenever my thoughts have kind of gone down that road, they quickly get derailed by scary words like projections and business plan. And those types of considerations can make that dream seem intimidating or unattainable. Well, Dr. Flowers is here to help. Dr. Schwanda Flowers graduated from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences College of Pharmacy in 1999. That's right, not only is she well-versed in the financial aspects of practice, she's also a fellow medical professional. In 2002, Dr. Flowers opened Flowers Family Pharmacy in Little Rock, Arkansas. Her expertise in pharmacology and business then led her to academia, where she led the way in pharmacy education, focusing on enhanced community practice services, entrepreneurship, ownership, business planning, and leadership and professional development. Schwanda, along with her husband, developed the Pharmacy Ownership and Leadership Academy to prepare student pharmacists for ownership. Dr. Flowers' work can be seen in multiple publications, including the American Journal of Pharmaceutical Education and the Journal of Pharmacy Practice, among others. She's a prominent face within organizations such as the National Community Pharmacists Association, the American and Arkansas Pharmacists Association, and the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy, or AACP. Within the AACP, she served in several leadership roles and on multiple committees. She's currently a loan officer for First Financial Bank in their Professional Services Division. Schwanda focuses her efforts on small businesses in both community pharmacy and independent veterinary practice ownership. Recognizing that passion for ownership and personal relationships are key to small business success, Schwanda uses her vast experience to support veterinarians in accomplishing their goal of ownership or expansion of their business. So today I am joined by Schwanda Flowers from First Financial Bank. Schwanda, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is our pleasure. Let's talk a little bit about your background to start out. This was really interesting, kind of as we were getting to know each other before the podcast. You're actually not originally from the world of finance. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of your journey into the world of finance through First Financial Bank?
Absolutely. I have had a little bit of an interesting pathway through my professional career, but by training, I'm a pharmacist. So I have a doctor of pharmacy degree and practiced community pharmacy for many years. And then I actually owned a pharmacy here in Arkansas. So through that small business ownership, I began teaching business planning, finance, and just taking a little bit of a different path, and actually spent some time in academia. So did a lot of work with students, especially pharmacy students, on ownership and leadership, financial planning and business planning. And through that, we actually created a program called the Pharmacy Ownership and Leadership Academy. And First Financial Bank stepped up and they were very interested in supporting future business owners. And so they stepped up, and through that collaboration with them, I ended up in the world of finance. So we do a lot of lending for both pharmacy and veterinarians. But for the last year and a half or so, I have spent all of my time with veterinarians.
So we really should be calling you Dr. Flowers.
Well, I don't always answer to that, but yeah, technically, I guess I do prefer Schwanda.
Perfect. Through all of your experience, kind of coming through the medical field and then into business training and academia, what are some of the major takeaways you've noticed from your experience?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's really important to highlight is just the fact that there are so many medical professionals, including veterinarians, who feel very ill-equipped to become owners. And, through the years, I have seen this over and over again. And so I think that it's important to recognize that there's so much clinical information that we have to learn and be taught in order to practice and, do well in our profession, that there's just not a lot of time in the curriculum for the colleges and schools to teach business and ownership. And I hate that because I think that it's so critical. But just quite frankly, there's just not time in the curriculum to do that for most of the colleges. And so, in order for a student to really get that knowledge, they have to go outside of the classroom, above and beyond, maybe take electives or be parts of different student organizations, that focus on ownership and business. But it can be tough and it can be quite intimidating. So if someone doesn't have that business background, quite often they shy away from opportunities for ownership or to purchase practices.
Absolutely. And I'm very much relating to what you're saying as a veterinary professional. And I did go outside of the curriculum and take business electives, but even still, it scratched the surface and it gave me a good foundation. I agree with you, just not enough time to really get everything you want to know in addition to your medical curriculum. So thinking about my own experience, I've spoken to lenders about practice startups, and they use these scary words like business plan and projections. And I'm like, what do I do with these? Can you kind of just walk us through briefly the process when applying for a business loan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I will tell you also from experience that when I owned my pharmacy, it was a startup, and it is very stressful to think about taking that leap, but it is probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my career. And so I think that when we hear those terms like business plans and projections and, putting something like that together when you haven't done it before, it almost seems like that's too much of a daunting task to take on, and it's just probably not meant to be. And really, the reality is quite the opposite. Their business plans can be a wide variety of things, and they look very different from every single person. But what I do with each and every customer when I start talking to them, especially if it is they're a first time, potential owner, or they are thinking about a startup and they don't necessarily have the history of a business or recent financials to look at, I give them examples of business plans. I still spend a lot of my time working with students, both in veterinary and pharmacy, and teaching them how to write a successful business plan. And so I have lots of examples that I share with customers. That's one of the first things that I offer. And then in addition, I offer projections. So at First Financial Bank, we feel like it's really important to understand the industry inside and out. And one of the best ways to do that is to spend some time looking at the benchmarks and looking at the data for well-managed practices. And so there's lots of industry experts, there's lots of associations out there that will publish data so that we can go back and see, let's benchmark, let's use those to do some projections. And we walk the customer through doing those projections every step of the way. I think it's very interesting, though, that when we talk about those of us that are very interested in science and feel like our brains really function in that science world, when we have to move out of that and do things in a world where we're talking about assumptions and projections, I find that lots of times we freeze and we panic because we want it to be black and white. But that's why we have resources to help. We have great partners at First Financial Bank, consultants, and just other individuals that will also help customers, and we make those connections every day. We want to be sure that every customer we work with feels confident, and that they have every resource that they need in order to be successful.
So that is very comforting to know that there are people like you out there to kind of hold our hands as we're walking through this, who have been through it on multiple levels, both as a medical professional owning a startup and from the financial aspect, to help us understand and not freeze in the face of those assumptions and not quite so black and white situations.
Yeah, I think that once somebody starts to dig into it and really gets excited about what they want to do and where they want to be and what kind of practice they want to have, there's so much excitement around ownership. And when you have that autonomy to practice the way you really want to practice and take care of animals like you want to take care of them without anybody else telling you how to do that, it is just an incredible feeling. It's so rewarding. I don't have anybody that I've worked with who comes back to me and says, "Oh, I wish that I hadn't, taken that leap into ownership. It's quite the opposite. They say, "What took me so long? I wish that I had done this sooner." And that, that's true success right there, when, they know that they've made a good decision, they're successful in their practice, and just their quality of life is really excellent.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad that you said that and that that is out there. You've seen it firsthand working with people on their startups to say, this is really a positive thing and something, something I'm glad that I've done.
Yeah, one of the things that I try to tell customers all the time is, when you think about what you're going to make as an associate veterinarian versus what you're going to make as an owner, just based off of, some industry standards and industry averages, it's usually about 3 times as much. It takes a little bit longer with a startup to get there. I'm certainly not saying it's easy. It is a ton of work, but it is work worth doing. But the rewards are real. I mean, the financial rewards are real, the professional rewards are real. And, I think that most of the time we have customers then who are looking for the next opportunity, or how can we expand, or, if we're leasing a space, now we're ready to buy. And that really has been the case, as I've worked with veterinarians over the last few years.
Oh, that is wonderful to hear. I'm so glad that, these business plans are successful and people are really reaping the benefits of doing it. When we're putting together our business plans and things like that and getting ready to come to the table and talk finances, what are some of the main pieces of information that we should plan to bring to the table? And you've kind of already touched on there's people available to help with that, but is there anything that we should kind of be prepared with ahead of time to make things a little more streamlined?
Absolutely. And I do think that there's some preparation that should happen prior to really thinking about ownership or purchasing a practice, and talking with a lender. It's never too soon to start a conversation with me, and I'll help you get ready and figure out what pieces of information we need. But really, on the front end, it's important for that veterinarian to know what their credit score is, to be in a place financially where they might be comfortable not taking a paycheck, for 6 months or so, especially if they're doing a startup. Have your tax returns ready, have a personal financial statement ready. That's really important, to be able to look at your personal finances and know where you stand. And the other thing would be to eliminate some of that revolving credit. So credit card debt is probably one of the biggest issues that we find when we're talking with associate veterinarians and trying to help them get started. Really think about eliminating all of those revolving credit accounts. That's really important. Not only will it help your credit score, but it just frees up your cash every month so that you can better service the debt. And so that's really important. Those are really the things that you need to think about in order to get prepared and start talking with lenders.
And I think you kind of segued beautifully into my next question, which has to do with being in that financial place to be ready to take this on. I mean, many of us are coming into this with significant vet school debt, so it can be really scary to think about applying for a practice loan, which can be very large. So, do our student loans affect our ability to qualify for business loans? And, what are some of the other kinds of debt we should keep in mind, like mortgages, automobiles, things like that?
No, that's a great question. And I do think when I'm talking with especially young veterinarians, it is sort of that elephant in the room where you just feel the weight of them thinking about that student loan debt. And I have 5 teenagers, a couple in college, and so I completely understand that stress of the debt that is associated with higher education. Vet school debt is good debt. So I know that it's higher than we'd like for it to be. It continues to rise over the last few years, but it is good debt. It tells us that you were successful in your academic career, and that you were prepared to practice. So that's important. We do not hold student debt against you. And so we recognize that in order for you to be prepared to own a practice, you've got to have your degree. And along with that is vet school debt. And so we like to look at your net worth outside of that. So when you put together your personal financial statement, what we do quite often is just remove that student loan debt from the picture. And if you have a positive net worth without that, then you're in a great position to acquire a practice or start up a practice, or, just to be more attractive to a lender. And so don't let student loan debt ever keep you from, looking into ownership or just exploring it if you have that interest. One of the things that we always say is, okay, mortgages, real estate, that's good debt, and it is. Quite often we use that for collateral. So if you have a mortgage on a home and you have at least 25% equity in that home, we can use that as positive collateral for the loan. So that also puts you in a better position from a lender's perspective. And so that's fine debt as well. Now, where we run into trouble is if you have student loan debt and you have a mortgage and you have a couple of car notes. And so what happens is, even though those things are not necessarily bad debt, your load each month is significant. And when we look at a potential customer, not only are we looking at the business and can that business be successful? Is it a strong business plan, or, has the business shown, revenue and growth over the last few years if it's an existing business? But we also have to look at all of the debt that you have personally. So we look at your ability to service the business loan, and then we have to look globally at your ability to service all of your debt. And so the last thing that we want to do is loan money to someone who's in a position where they're not going to be able to make those payments, whether that's to us for the business, or, whether that's to other, service other debts that you already have previously personally. That we're not successful if the customer is not successful. So we're very careful at looking at every aspect of that and saying, hey, here's what you need to do to be more prepared financially in order for you to start up this business or acquire this business. So I'll walk through that, give somebody tips. Here's what we need to do. Here's what it's looking like. You're not going to have cash flow left over, but I'll walk through that very clearly with the customer so that they understand what that looks like, and what servicing all of those debts, is going to mean at the end of the month. And I think once they get a really good picture for that, it makes a lot more sense.
Sure, all about setting somebody up for success so that they can have that rewarding experience that you described when it comes to taking out that loan and owning that startup, or, buying into that business, whatever it is that they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, of course, we're here talking to you, who is part of First Financial Bank. So, let's talk a little bit more about First Financial Bank specifically. What is unique about First Financial and how they operate and how they're equipped to help veterinary borrowers?
Absolutely. I am very excited to be a team member with First Financial Bank, and have the opportunity to lend to veterinarians across the country as part of this bank. So, a couple of things that sets us apart, and probably the biggest differentiator for us, is that we're not necessarily bankers. We certainly have a team of bankers behind us, supporting us, underwriters that are fantastic. We come to the customer from a very different perspective. Our lenders are either industry experts or former business owners. And so we come at it from that perspective of, we understand what the customer is experiencing, what they're going through. We understand that stress associated with being on the other end of the table. And for a customer, I think that's very different because we have a very high touch model. And it's easy with some of the larger lenders to kind of get lost in the shuffle. That doesn't happen with First Financial Bank. And so we pride our model on being very high touch. The customer deals with either me or our other veterinary lender, Ashley Moore, from the very beginning. So the first conversation that we have with them until the time that they pay their loan off, all they have to do is call us. They have our cell phone. We encourage customers to call or text. We don't have specific office hours. We are available for every question. And for example, everything going on this year with COVID, I am, relieved to say that most veterinarians across the country still had a really productive year, and we're not hit as hard as some other industries. And so I'm very thankful for that, just, from my customers' perspective. But many of them did need paycheck protection loans from the SBA. Many of them needed other kind of relief loan advice or help. So I did all of the PPP loans for the customers in my portfolio. That's just something we thought was important to offer, to take care of for our customers, be sure that they had the funds that they needed. That's the kind of service that we pride ourselves on at First Financial Bank. We're going to treat our customers like our veterinarians treat their clients, and we just wouldn't do it any other way. We do loans for startups, acquisitions of practices, so purchasing practices. We do expansions, money for working capital or additional equipment or remodeling. We do a lot of purchases that include a practice and the real estate. And that's something that I enjoy talking to veterinarians about, because quite often they're a little they're a little timid to take on such a large loan and purchase a practice and the real estate. But at the end of the day, once I've sort of finished explaining the nuances of that, they can see how it's really a better deal to own the real estate too and take on that larger load. Cash flow is usually better. And so we really enjoy talking to customers about their plan. We want to know each one. When I take portfolio to loan committee, that loan committee wants to know about the customer. It's not just numbers, it's not just spreadsheets, but it really is, who are they? What do they want to do? What are their goals? What does that look like financially? And how can we as a lender help them reach their business goals?
It sounds like such a mutually beneficial model where, you're being treated as an individual. You have a problem, you have a question, you pick up the phone and you call Swanda or you call Ashley, not the customer service line. And to be considered as a whole person, like you said, when you take it to loan committee, and then really the focus be not to go through a system, but to really set you up for success. What you described sounds fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. We hope it is fantastic. I mean, we really want to give the customer the best experience possible. And that's important because, quite frankly, the best referral source that we can have is our customers. And, when I have somebody call and say, hey, I went to school with so and so and you did their loan last year and I was talking to them and they said I should give you a call, that's the best feeling ever. And that's what we want to happen with each and every one of our customers. We want them to have a great experience. We are a preferred SBA lender, so we do small business association loans for our veterinarians. And I think that, that can be a little daunting in and of itself. There's a lot of forms to fill out. There are people who are a little bit nervous about that process because they've heard that it takes a long time. But because we're a preferred lender, the process is much faster with us. We can do in-house approvals with our underwriter. We've been through that so much that we can really walk them through that and make it just as easy as it can possibly be.
Swanda, I've truly enjoyed our conversation today. I feel like I've learned so much, and the whole process of talking finances when it comes to all of the things that you described, acquisitions, startups, extra capital, things like that, seems so much more attainable now that we've talked and you've described it. So thank you so much for all of that. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
So I think just a final thought would be that, if you're a veterinary student out there listening, or, you're a veterinarian who is an associate and interested in ownership, or, even maybe an owner who wants to expand or, buy another practice, it's never too soon to call us and have a conversation. We would love to talk with them about their goals and see how we can help. I would just encourage them to find a lender who understands the industry, who really wants to work with them, like you said, as an individual, and he'll be there for them every step of the way. I may work with somebody a year before we ever get started on a loan for them. And that's absolutely wonderful. That's what we're here for. We want to be a resource. We don't just want to be that loan officer. We want to be a resource for everybody in the industry.
Fantastic. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flowers, for joining us today. Thank you to First Financial Bank for sponsoring this event, and thank you to everyone out there for joining us. If you'd like to find more episodes like this, click on the Education tab on Vetfolio's page. As always, we'd love to hear your input on this session, as well as ideas for topics you'd like to hear from us in the future. Feel free to reach out to me at dvm@vetfolio.com. You can also visit my Facebook page at Dr. Cassie DVM, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And remember, if one animal is better off because of you today, it's a great day.